Oh, good.
Yeah, we can see. Yeah,
Mhm.
so we can see. Mhm. So I think we have just started our live streaming, and we'll still wait for 5 more minutes for people to join, and then we will start off. So, yeah. All right, we're gonna go live in like 3 more minutes. We'll still wait for a few more people to join. I know it looks like a long time waiting, but yeah, let's start in the next 3 minutes. All right. Thank you so much, everyone who has been waiting for the panel discussion to start. Um, so, welcome to another panel discussion of AppNotes. Today, we're going to discuss more about fintech companies. So, the topic is in fintech, we build trust, and how our banking apps are at risk, and how do fintech companies, mitigate these risks. Welcome to another episode of panel discussion on these various security topics. We have I'm your moderator and host Shubho Halder. I'm the co-founder and CISO at AppNox. Quick, a little bit about me. So I have been giving out mobile security related trainings and programs in different conferences such as Black Hat, RSS, Scan, and I've been figuring out different security issues and loopholes in businesses like Google, Facebook, and Microsoft. I've been running AppNox for the past decade, and what I focus on mainly is the security and technical aspect of the company. Along with me, I have Abul, Majori, and Selena. So, and I would like to go ahead and introduce our panel to you guys. So, Abul, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit? He is the head of information security at Eastern Bank. Abul, please, the table is yours. Yeah.
Thank you, Shubha, for inviting me to the panel discussion. It's a great honor for me to come into that and discuss. Let me introduce myself. Myself, Abul Kalam Azad. I am the head of information security for Eastern Bank. I actually look after overall information security, cyber security, and compliance related activity for my bank. And I do risk assessment for application and other server, anything which has a digital presence. And we have to look after also different compliance requirements like PCI DSS, ISO, and GDPR. So I have about 15 years of working experience in IT security, cyber security, compliance, and IT audit related area. And I have total 20 years of working experience in different industry like healthcare, finance, government, all that. And I'm also a seasoned speaker into different cyber security conference in country and abroad. So that's all about me. Let's have further discussion at the panel. Look forward. Thank you, Shubho.
Thank you, Abul. Thank you so much for taking out your time and joining this panel discussion. It's a pleasure for us to join this. Uh, Thank you, Abul. We also have Majori, and she's the co-founder and CEO of AltPayNet. Majori, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Marjorie Labindao. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Outpaynet, and my expertise is on security and infrastructure. So in fact, I have my certification as a CISM, a Certified Information Security Manager, and CVA, Certified Vulnerability Assessor. And for infrastructure, I'm also a certified AWS Associate Architect. And Outpaynet is a fintech company. For the major services we have, we are also a card scheme acquirer for Diners, Discover, and China Union Pay International. We are also a payment gateway technology provider. So we provide white label solutions for those who are interested to be a third-party payment processor. And we're also providing software as a service developer or provider for those who are interested to use our solutions. And we have recently we have launched our mobile banking solutions as well for e-money. And we have, of course, Alpaynet grown its network. We are located in Hong Kong, Philippines, Malta, USA, Malaysia, Australia, and recently we have UK. And Alpaynet is a PCI DSS level 1 certified company. We have licenses also to operate as a payment operator system in Philippines and Malaysia. And with regards to infrastructure, we are also a select partner for AWS, particularly for public sector. Yeah, so that's basically the gist. So we founded the company in 2015. And thank you for the invitation at Upnox.
Wow, that was great. And thank you so much for taking out your time and joining this panel discussion. It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much. We also have Selena working, and she is the section head of IT risk assessment at Agrobank. Selena, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hello. If you can hear me. Sorry, the
Yes.
line is quite bad around here. All right. My name is Selina. Actually, I'm from Agrobank Malaysia. What I normally do as experience of 14 years in not only in security but also in governance and also in risk. What we normally do around here is normally we look into the regulatory requirement, not only from the Bank Negara locally, but also on the internationally matters, which is PCI DSS and also Security Commissioner. Our bank is basically provide loans to agriculture in Malaysia, and we're also looking into sustainability, not only for the agriculture of Malaysia, but also on the third party and also in the cyberspace. So I also actually write few books, which is a code of conduct for Malaysia insurance, which is a PDPA. And I also wrote for security governance on cyber awareness or cyber attack. And recently we actually write for carbon for third party cloud provider. So that's all for me.
Thank you so much, Selena, for joining this, taking out your time and joining this panel discussion. It's a pleasure having you here. Thank you, everyone. Awesome. So before I dive into today's agenda of the panel discussion, just a quick thing. All those who are watching us over social media channels, LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter, please go ahead and put your question in the comment box or in the thread. We would take it up by the end of the panel discussion, and we'll try to ask this question to the panelists. If you have joined through Zoom, please use the Q&A feature. We also have a poll, and please go ahead and vote in that poll. That will help us to optimize our discussion. Please go ahead and do that. Also, we are going to keep this a little bit time box. So if we couldn't answer your question, we'll try to get those questions and send it to our panelists and then get the answer and send it over to your email. So don't forget to come and register in our webinar registration, please. So, all right. So let's deep dive into the agenda. We are going to keep it very simple. We will just dive into some basic banking app vulnerabilities and security risks, which we have seen. Some of the effective approaches to build trust among app users, and how to navigate regulatory requirements for secure banking app development, because for banks, regulations and compliances comes hand in hand. And obviously to gain industry experts' perspective on safeguarding user data. So these are some of the pointers which we're going to cover in the agenda. I'm going to quickly run through this. So the most important thing is trust, and why trust is very important in fintech. Just imagine a mobile device having all your account, and it's very personal to you. A mobile device is a very trustworthy device for you. If it's a laptop and there is a way to log out, and like let's say if I want to log into my bank account and I can go into anybody's laptop and I can log in, right? But that's not true for mobile apps, right? So I won't give my phone to somebody else to log into their banks. And there's a reason for that, because mobile devices are considered a very personal device. And that is why applications such as banking application or fintech application needs to build the trust, and which is very important. So to build those trust, some of the key things which we look at are the data protection. What are the regulatory compliances? Are we following compliance in a proper way? How can we increase consumer confidence, right? And to hope that the reputation for the application is obviously very, very important, and obviously business sustainability for the application, right? So these are few of the important factors which we look at. And what are the risks associated with banking apps? There's a lot of risk which we have seen in the past decade. We have done almost 300,000 assessments, and few of the very common risks which we have seen are like data breaches happening or unauthorized accesses into your backend servers, mobile device security, weak authentication, and obviously transaction fraud, right? So these are some of the very common risks which are associated with banking apps. And then if I go, if I talk about what is the role of a fintech in mitigating these risks, you need to be using robust security measures, right? You need to use various, in your various stages of software development lifecycle, you should have various security gates. You need to make sure that you're compliant with all of your compliances. You need to make sure that you have continuous monitoring built, right? And these are some of the very key role in a fintech to mitigate the risks which we were talking about in the previous slide, right? Just a pitch about AppNext. How do we come and help? So we are a plug-and-play mobile app security. So what it means is you can just upload your application into your portal, and by various stages of scan, such as static, dynamic, API, we kind of figure out if there's any vulnerability or any security loophole which is open in your application, and we try to help developers and businesses fix those issues as soon as possible. So that's what AppNext does, right? And how does it do, and how does all of this fits into place? We do all of this automated vulnerability assessment in the next in like 16 minutes, right? So it's very simple. You upload your application, we perform vulnerability assessment as soon as possible, and then we give you a detailed report with CVS scores. So that's how it kind of all works out, right? Few of the customers with whom we are working with, their logos are here. We work with Shell, Unilever, Singapore Airlines, and more. So let's start the panel discussion. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can have everybody in the screen, all the panelists in the screen, and we can have the discussion right then and there. So my first question for the panel discussion goes to Selena. So Selena, if you can, so this was in my mind while I was going through this, like, what do you think, what are the 3 key security challenges faced by banking apps in the fintech industry today, according to you?
Okay, based on my experience with this, is most of the fake application that basically spread among the public, which is in iOS, Apple, Android, Google Play. This is the most main thing that always receive a complaint from customer. Another one is because of the cyber attacks is gaining more and more, the scammers or hackers basically prey the victim using the phishing by saying that, hey, you perform an OTP, you perform an activity, and we giving you a fake SMS or which is a secure OTP saying that, hey, this is what you need to do. You need to provide us this by calling this number. So this is a common complaints from the customer. And another one is we basically been requested by our regulators to basically, instead of multiple access to a device at home, bind it to one. So this is basically the challenges that we need to do. And we may, in Malaysia, there will be no more link SMS OTP. but there will be a soft OTP, which is a soft token will be accessed by the web customer. So this is the main security challenges that the bank application have to change. So currently, what happened now, we basically are in the middle of enhancing our bank application. So these are basically the one that we are keep tracking on. So this is the main security challenges that we are, happens right now, because we need to educate our customer as well. So yeah, this is the main thing that happened to us.
It's very interesting, and I think this is very similar to the industry itself. It doesn't matter which geolocation it is, because even in India or even in Southeast Asia, I mean, you are based out of Southeast Asia, but Middle East and others where we are, it's very similar on one of the attacks which you just mentioned. So I'm going to go and ask, Azad, what are the 3 measures should be taken to mitigate the risk associated with mobile banking apps, such as data breaches and account fraud, or whatever Selena mentioned, right? What are the 3 measures you think should be taken to mitigate these risks?
Yeah, that's a very interesting thing. Like what we face in our life, mobile apps, everybody is using mobile apps, and what type of vulnerability we really get. So definitely database is one of the major area where everyone is suffering. Every bank, financial institute, fintech is suffering for the database. Another common area is unprivileged access, or gaining access, or privilege escalation, what we say. Like someone is getting access, what actually he is not authorized to do. So he can identify the loophole in the application and can log into the application, and he can enter into the sensitive area of the application, and then can transmit data, or it can do something malicious, or they can do something fraud. So that is the thing, unauthorized access or escalation privilege, what we say. That's the common area. And definitely one of the majority already Selena mentioned, like fake application. So people used to download application which is actually not genuine, fake. Like lots of website, Facebook, different website, they offer that these mobile apps and rating is very good. So people understand this is the genuine website, legal website, or they identify that is the genuine apps. They download unlimitedly, they register, and they enter your username, password. So using these fake apps, hacker gain the access or genuine credential from the user. After that, hacker use this credential and log in into the original apps and do malicious activity with that. So I think these are the 3 areas where we definitely find lots of vulnerability and lots of interesting area, and that's the major what we found over last few years. So there are lots of other area which we can, I guess, other participants will be discussing. Yeah, thank you.
Great. I also have a question from Rahul to you specifically. Is there any tool that helps us in identifying, security issues which you have been working on? You mentioned identifying mobile security issues, but yeah, I would just make it a little bit generic.
Yeah, definitely there are lots of tools available, and uh, for to identify that type of vulnerability, that type of loopholes in the real life. So there is tools like you can mention, you have a tools, AppNox has a tools. I personally use this for in the and we have I have used few other tools also for assessing the application vulnerability. So there are lots of tools, and uh, main thing is manually we cannot identify this type of vulnerability. It is impossible. We have tools. We have to use the best tool to identify the recent vulnerability. Otherwise, we cannot detect the real time. And I think, Shubha, you can also add few things because you are working in this particular area, so you can add few more things. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you are right. It's not like one tool solve all, but there are multiple tools in the industry which you need to use, right? Specifically for mobile apps, I mean, AppNox is obviously there, but it's not only about that. You need to also have tools for fraud mitigation. You need to also have tools for, you need to have your stock set up. You need to have your assignment set up just to make sure that all of these. I mean, frauds will happen, things will happen, things will break, but there has to be a way to be notified users even before things happen, right? So that's at least that's what we aim for. So yeah, that's. Thank you so much, Arvind, for sharing your insights on that. But now that we talked about various issues, various security issues, and various security things, various security vulnerabilities, and one of the major problem is while we try to solve these, it becomes uh, like the usability versus security becomes the debatable question, right? So my question to majority, because my question to you is how can banking apps ensure that security and privacy of customer data is intact while providing a seamless user experience? Because somewhat I feel that the user experience gets hampered when we try to introduce more secure practices of security. Like I can't remember if you keep telling me to change password every 7 days, it's very possible for me to remember password every 7 days, right? I'm just giving an example, but my question to you is how do we keep the user experience seamless while keeping care of data security as well as privacy? Yeah, Joy.
Yeah. So generally, in order for us, right, to implement a secure environment, we have to start with security by design. So that means we're taking into account security, not necessarily um hampering the user experience, but usually that's the case. But nowadays, since the cyber security incidents actually is happening, and of course users are aware of these incidents. So for sure, when you implement something like multi-factor authentication and so on, they are aware of this implementation. So the users are adopting on the side of the one implementing mobile applications. We just need to take into account how in terms of performance while we are implementing the security by design, or even when we of course we are looking at into two fronts. One is of course security by design, and the second one is continually conduct security assessment, because from third-party assessments like PCI DSS and other relevant certifications, or testing in this case like what you are providing at Upnox, it would help us to actually ensure the security posture of the application. And I'm looking at it in three areas. One is of course the environment, wherein the handling of these services, like for example, the servers, databases, storage, we have to take into account the environment. The next thing is since it is security by design, then likely we have to ensure good secure coding guidelines from the development and implementation itself. And then lastly, of course, the security application testing. And that means we have to check whether there is a strong cryptography, multi-factor authentication, or in terms of authentication, authorization, sessions, or even the devices that the user used, and how we'd be able to make it seamless, like automatic detection. So in application of AI and machine learning, I think it would make the experience of the user seamless, while we do not compromise security. That's how I look at it.
I agree with you, and secure by design, security while you are working on it. I think that's the best way to go forward with. Otherwise, if security was always an afterthought, I think then it becomes clunky. If security is a before thought and it's included by design, I think somewhere we can improve the user experience itself on itself. I completely agree with you, John.
Yeah, actually, this should be the principle. Like security should be the inbuilt culture of application development. So, such that before planning, we should to think about security. While designing, we should think about security during development testing. So, if we can build security into our culture, that's why it comes AppSec development, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
DevOps, after the DevSecOps, like security is
Yeah.
the part of application development operation.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think that is a very important thing. And these are some of the terminology which you just mentioned, right? DevSecOps, and these are terminology which just got like the last 5 years or a decade. These terminologies has come into place, but I think this is a good thing in terms of security, because security was always thought to be a non-functional testing which happens after the QA is gone. But now that we are including security more into the overall DevOps or DevSecOps cycle, then that seems very interesting. Yeah. So, all right. So, while you're talking about all of this, Selena, just wanted to understand from you, how can we collaborate? Like, how can collaboration between fintech companies, bank, and security solution providers strengthen the security posture of banking apps?
Okay. Based on our from my experience, few months past, on the collaboration of fintech and all other security solutions, whenever they came in for the tender or whenever they want to promote something, we basically always advise them to basically master or understood the local country local regulation, because of most of the time that they came in, they basically saying, oh, we are complying with ISO, PCI DSS. Yeah, we get it, but do you understood the local regulatories? Because sometimes that the data will be transferred from not only just one place, but maybe put it in maybe in Singapore, maybe in Vietnam, or maybe in Japan. So we want to know how the data across borders will be taken care of. So normally we basically emphasize the regulatory requirement. And are they experienced in working with other banks, which is like who emphasizes also pretty much similar, which is we will want to see, do you work with a local bank? If you don't work with a local bank, okay, do you work with a similar bank, which is like maybe in Singapore, which is emphasize security more on that matter. And number two, which is do you really understand there is an incident locally that happened, instead of internationally? Maybe there is a website or we just can tell you that, hey, there is an incident going on, which is you need to be careful with. And maybe you hear a gossip, or maybe there will be a whisper in the industry about the incident that happened in some other industry or some other company. So we appreciate if you understood that. We appreciate if you have that kind of knowledge, so that you can help us to understand, to how to say, to mitigate or minimize our I don't know how to say, our vulnerability and threat, and which is it can also help us to understand where we can sort of innovate better. So this is the kind of thing that basically we emphasize on. And we found that it was a great help, and we don't mind the cost sometimes, but sometimes we do mind about the cost. But we see if where we can see fit within like 5 or 10 years kind of period. So that's where normally I think that the collaboration can be done in that, as how to say, in essence of it. But as a bank, as a person who work in bank, but that normally is a requirement for a bank. So that's from my side.
Yes, Selena, I think that's the few of the good points which you brought out. It's are the regulations, right? Because with banking industry, regulatory and banks goes hand in hand. And if you are partnering up with any security solutions, or in fact any vendors, you need to make sure that all of these regulatory compliances are in place, are in check, and that also kind of helps you to reduce your risk of exposure and things like that. I completely agree with your point on that, and I just want to continue with that point with Azad, and I want to ask him, like, how can regulatory compliances such as PCI DSS or even GDPR for the matter be effectively addressed in banking app development?
Okay, fine. So we have to remember one thing, like we always talk about compliance. So compliance come from certain minimum requirement, like everybody says that everybody has to stay into that minimum round. Like we consider PCI DSS, we consider GDPR, HIPAA, or many other compliance. So for in this particular specific industry, there are some specific requirements. Like let's we talk about PCI DSS a little bit. Like while we dealing with the card, we have to follow certain guideline to protect the card information, to protect the breaching or protect the fraud, right? So let's talk about the PCI DSS. And PCI DSS has a control and they have a certain requirement. So if we follow that, that ensure at least you can protect your infrastructure from that type of fraud or that type of. So that's why PCI DSS compliance comes. So that is applicable for who follow the who do the business with the card. So it comes bank, merchant, or any other fintech company who actually will be connected with the bank or who will be doing business with the card. So that's why this compliance has to be enforced. So and everybody, as we want like to discuss one more thing, like a payment ecosystem, like as we fintech bank is connected, so we become part of ecosystem. So in the ecosystem, if any part is become affected, so whole part will be affected, right? Like in if we consider our body, like my hand become affected, then I will be affected, my full body will be affected. Similar to the payment system, if any component or any partner in that payment system become affected, become attacked, then whole payment system ecosystem will be collapsed. That's why to make it resilient, we have to follow certain compliance like PCI DSS, GDPR, or you consider any other thing. So everybody has to follow this thing. Otherwise, we cannot protect from that. Like as a bank, we are following PCI DSS. Some merchant is connected to me. He's not following. Like he, whatever card data he's storing, he's not maintaining the encryption. He's not doing the masking. So any breach can be happen from that merchant part. So if the happen from the merchant side, ultimately bank will be losing. So that data from the customer, bank customer, or it can be from any fintech company. If the fintech company become hacked, ultimately system will be collapsed. So that's why it's a compliance comes and everybody in the part of the ecosystem has to follow the compliance at least minimum level. And if we can do better, then it will definitely good for us. And similarly, the GDPR, it's from European Union, and we all know that it is part of the data privacy, especially PII, personally identifiable information. So protect the personal information, we have to follow GDPR. So I think what we should to do, if we follow compliance, at least we have to make it mandatory for all the partner into the ecosystem. Otherwise, we are not protected. Someone in the ecosystem is following and someone is not following. It doesn't make any sense.
I agree. I agree. I completely agree with you. And I like the fact that you mentioned that compliance is the minimum set of rules and regulations which needs to be maintained across. Otherwise, things are going to fall down. And that is so true when you think it in that direction. So I completely agree with you, Azara, on that. And speaking of this minimum set of rules, right, in terms of regulations, but if I translate it in terms of internal company, in terms of developers, I have a question for majority on that. So, uh, what are the things which we say, I mean, regulations and compliance are for businesses to follow, and that kind of trickles down to developers or technical team in terms of secure coding practices or application security testing. So my question is, what are the best three practices for secure coding and application security testing specific to banking apps? Yeah.
Yeah. So as I observe also with regards to data breaches, one of which that we can identify is security misconfiguration. Usually, the is especially for infrastructure like S3, there are sometimes before they allow the client to actually configure themselves, but since there are many breaches happening because of none configuration at all in terms of security. Aside apart from the S3, one of which is of course, for example, Firebase, because by default, the client is not, it has no restriction at all. It is open to the public, and if the configuration is not being done by the team or the implementer themselves, then there will be of course a security breach. So I think based on data, that's how I see it. So I can say that it's one of the best practice that we should do. Number two is vulnerable and outdated components. One of the reasons also in terms of how breaches happens is because of outdated, or probably because the security team does not it's not also updated in terms of vulnerabilities or CVEs and so on. So that's why the moment that a component is actually hackable or probably vulnerable, then there's a potential of breach, and it happens, no? Like for example, for Equifax, they were able to update their components, so that's why breach happens. And lastly is of course cryptographic failures, or probably there's disclosure in terms of sensitive data that when somebody or a threat actor would decompile applications, reverse engineer, or we can say there are of course examples that some developers leave the credentials in a repository, for example. So
Yeah.
I can say that the best practice, it can be identified based on the breaches that we need to prioritize. This is apart, of course, from authentication, that is on the user ends, authentication on the user ends, or even encryption of, say, for example, in terms of transmission of data, wherein it has to be encrypted and so on. But usually breaches happens because on the management, or even applying security measures on the side of the development, on the side of the implementer themselves.
Yeah, that's great to hear actually. And your point number two regarding components, right? And that's very interesting because we at AppNox we recently launched SBOM as a feature to actually figure out what are the components which are being used in your mobile apps and to check whether the component is vulnerable or outdated. We recently launched this week itself. And while we were doing the research, the initial research of why do we want to bring this up, and we realized that this is something which is very, very kind of important. And because this kind of affects your supply chain of your software development lifecycle. So yeah, and then we realized that, but it's really glad to hear from you that this is one of those top three which you think in secure coding design practices you need to keep in mind and you need to work on. And that's pretty interesting. Thanks. Awesome. So I have a question for probably Azad. So what are the two strategies which should be adopted to build customer trust in banking apps and ensure transparent communication regarding security measures are being communicated to users? Because one of the major thing is even after we put in all of these design practices, even after we put in secure coding practices and everything, at the end, the consumer is the one who's using the app, right? And if they're not convinced, and if you cannot build trust with them, then there is again a problem, right? So, how do you think you can, build that trust? Yeah.
Right. User are the ultimate consumer. So we have to build their trust. Whatever we develop, what we published, they are the using. So we have to build their trust, and they should assure that this app is secure. Whatever activity they are doing, their app through application, they should identify that is secure. So that's the first thing we have to do is the awareness, building the awareness, and give them idea about how security actually works. And what is the security, and they have to understand the user security is the shared responsibility, not only the fintech company's responsibility, like banks responsibility. That is the shared responsibility. Like as a user, I have my user ID, password, and pin. So as a user, if I share my password and pin, no organization is going to protect the user, and nobody in this world, secure coding practice or next generation firewall, different monitoring cannot protect these things. So we have to, as a user has to understand, and user has to admit that the security is the shared responsibility, and they should identify where is the actual risk is there. So if user can understand where is the risk exists, then jointly user and organization can build their trust, and so then user can identify, so we are having lots of trust among us, and we understand our responsibility, and everybody is following their responsibility, then only we can build this trust, and we can protect each other. So this is the one thing, and for that thing, definitely fintech company, financial organization, they should come forward, because user doesn't have much idea about, like, you and we, community, we can give to our community back this type of awareness, like this webinar, whatever we are doing. We should do this type of, the organization should do this type of awareness, like how can we protect, what is our behavior should be, like regarding password, regarding pin, why, how should we protect this thing, what should we do, like while we download the apps from the website, what should we check whether this apps is genuine apps or this is the fake apps, what we have to do if the hacker try to do social engineering through Facebook or any other different way to take the password. So this type of awareness we should do more frequently, and then user will be get more awareness, and then user can understand what they should do. That's why build can the trust, and we can build that long trust, and that will be the actually effective way to protect each other.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And security is a shared responsibility, and that's very, very, very important. It is not just the responsibility of the provider or I mean service provider. It's also a responsibility of the user, and it needs to be a shared responsibility. Somewhere, service provider needs to give the ease of usage to the user so that they can also take care of the security in that way. And I completely agree with you on that as well. Yeah, that's a great point. So before I move on to ask few more questions, we are getting few more questions in the Q&A box, and we are also getting few more questions from the social media sites. Guys, please keep the questions coming. We're going to ask after. So I have few questions. Let me ask these questions, and then I'll go ahead and ask the questions you guys have asked. So yeah, just be patient for probably few more minutes, right? All right. Okay, so I'm going to go to Selena, and I have a question to ask. So this is about how can organization proactively detect and respond to security incidents in real time to minimize the impact on banking apps and gain customer trust, right? Yeah.
The most important thing for us to basically being proactive to avoid such disruption for our customer is monitoring, and awareness. These are the most important. So the monitoring, most of people will be asking, okay, what kind of monitoring that we should put in place? Number one is the brand of your application. You have to monitor the brand of your application, regardless of is either in iOS, Google Play, or Android, or even a website. Make sure that your brand is always being monitored. And because of we have this kind of experience not only in banking but also in insurance, that some people will basically try to impersonate you by saying that, okay, this is actually, for example, this is a shell company saying that, oh yeah, we actually providing a gas which lower price, or maybe we provide services that which is does not exist in the official website. So that's the reason why, that to avoid a loss of trust from the client or customer, or maybe a future investor or our current investor, we have to have this brand monitoring in place. That's number one. Number two is basically monitoring of some certain insurance, they basically monitor their own agent, whereby that to ensure that their insurance or their product to have sales, to make sure that all the information that we provided is not via pen or pencil, but by iPad, and also have a recognition of which is taking a photo of customer together with the ID, saying that we purchased, this customer purchased it, as a proof of purchase of insurance, which is it was basically have been done for 2-3 years ago in Malaysia. As for the incident, we're basically monitoring via Trade Intel, which is actually 24/7. SOC team, which is the most important team ever, which is they are actually the one who actually track and monitor any cyber attack that coming to the company, which is either you are in bank or insurance or in a normal fintech company. Monitoring is a must, because we want to avoid that the hacker coming in and stealing data from our company, right? So SOC team are the most important thing. Another one that we basically fail to include, if you're in insurance or if you're in banking, we should also work together, collaborate with a call center department, digital banking team, which is most of they're actually the first of defense, basically dealing with the customer who actually come and complain to them what's going on. So which is the call center department, digital banking, customer experience team. This is basically to improve and also initiate innovation to improve the current banking mobile to a better services to our customers. So that's normally the thing that actually I experience. And number two is to introduce a special features that notify the customers, because we are binding to one devices, right? So if there is another device have been introduced that using the customer information, then there is a notification informing them that, hey, your account has something wrong. So do you need us to block further? So this kind of notification need to be done. Here in Malaysia, there is a few banks have done that, and actually expanding more because of this actually a new features for some banks. So this kind of thing is actually doing a lot of some changes, a lot of some it's sort of revolutionized the mobile apps in Malaysia, especially for the banking area. So this is basically our most of proactive things that currently progressively happen in Malaysia. So yeah, that's the one. That's for me.
That's great to know, actually. And so device binding is something which is very much possible for a mobile app, and you kind of device bind it, and you kind of do an active response to the user saying that, hey, your account is being used somewhere else, or this is a new device, do you want to block it, or do you want to add this device, delete the previous device? And this kind of helps the user to take security decisions also, and kind of helps the shared security responsibilities between the users and the banking sector, which is great. And I think that's a revolutionary thing which is happening, and that's really nice. And another revolutionary thing which is happening parallelly to that is the open banking system, the open APIs, where the banks are trying to integrate with other small fintech players, and letting them go ahead and do more services or value-added services around it, right? So I have a question for Majori for that. So what are the two implications of open banking and API integrations on the security of banking apps?
The adoption of open banking and API is, of course, revolutionary. It actually extends services not only to the bank, but even to its partners, especially, for example, for fintech industry. It allows us to participate in the value chain, and as a way we can help and assist, for example, for Andaan Bank, especially in the Philippines. That's still something that we need to address, or even work on as a nation, right? So but the implication for open banking and API integration, though it is helpful and revolutionary, but potentially the exposure also increases for any unauthorized or breach, for example, for credentials. So that's why there should be a very extensive implementation in terms of connectivity to ensure that whatever the transaction being conducted is actually valid or not. And another thing is since the it is revolutionary, the scope in terms of how you'd be able to assess whether this still secure. So it means a lot of work. I mean, in terms of monitoring, ensuring that the third party accessing these functionalities or features still the valid connection. So in terms of work, it increases for the team.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Yeah, it does. It's a new thing. The open banking and open API where banks are opening it up to others. It's somewhere you need to build that also with your partner ecosystem. I completely agree with you. All right, I think I've asked you enough questions, but there are a few questions from our viewers. I'll just go ahead and ask it. Anybody can take this question up, right? So the first question that I have is: are there tools that can identify non-genuine or let's say fake apps that are in the app store, or do you have or rather, I don't know whether there are tools or not, but if there are, happy to hear. But are there, let me rephrase this question and probably it'll be very beneficial for everyone. Is there a process to report fake apps probably? Or is there a process for you guys to actually go ahead and figure out that these apps are fake and do a takedown or a takedown request?
Yeah. Okay, I'm taking this question because I have I have some experience with this thing. Like there are process, and definitely this process has some tools. Ultimately, they using lots of thing inside of this. So there are even separate company also. They monitor. Like if you enlisted for the takedown service, or if you enlisted for that, is called generally brand protection and dark web monitoring, like that type of thing. So they monitor across the web and dark web, what we see in general web and dark web for your company related information, for your particular apps. If you have any apps, so they identify what in the web there is any fake apps in the name of your organization or the name of your company. So they identify and they do report. And in that identification, they definitely lots of tools, lots of insight, and there are lots of manual activity, and that is a new area of work. So that definitely is there. So anybody can use their service, and there are specialist organization for that type of service. So if they can identify, then you can take the take down service, take down as a service from that company or several companies. So definitely there is a process. So definitely that is the process, and in that process tools is there.
Okay, that's great to hear actually. So the keyword to search for is takedown services and you mentioned brand abuse services, like companies who are doing brand abuse prevention kind of services. Okay, that's great. I have another question from the audience. What are the basic security checklists when we go live with a mobile app?
I think I can have some suggestions for the basic security checklist. Although I'm very well oriented with PCI DSS, and they have a checklist for merchants. You can actually run through it, because you can check your environment. I mentioned earlier about services related to mobile, or even for databases, servers, and so on. There's a checklist. They call it SAQ. You can actually have assessment yourselves. You can check it out, and so on. Though it is for merchants, but when they're talking about merchants, definitely you are processing information, and more of it, which like personal information, PII, the personal identifiable information, or even sensitive information like payments if you are into payments. And one, of course, that you can to be easier for everyone is to have tools. There are a lot of tools that you can utilize from open source to check your environment, and even for example for paid tools like what AppNox is actually providing, it will fast track your assessment. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's how to go forward with. You can use those tools, or there are checklists. I'm sorry, you mentioned SAQ is the checklist for the
Yeah,
merchant.
for the merchant.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
That is
assessment for
self-assessment questionnaire, right?
yeah, it's a
Self-assessment questionnaire, right? I like to add
Sure.
one thing here, like OSAP, OWASP, Open Web Application Project. They provide comprehensive checklist for application testing, right? So, and ultimately, they are the non-profit organization. They do as research on application security, and every 3 years they published top 10 mobile app security. What are the threat and what should be the checklist? They have a very comprehensive, that is generic comprehensive list, and worldwide it is very popular, and all the application develop they follow. And against that, and if we like to follow any particular compliance, like what already Lavendra said, that PCI DSS, they have self-assessment questionnaire for application development. Like different compliance, they also have some sorts of questionnaires. So I think if anybody can follow the Open App OSAP, OWSP questionnaire and checklist, they can get general idea. And after that, if they like to follow any particular compliance like PCI DSS and GDPR, they can follow the self-assessment SAQ. So both the combination can make them more resilient.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, uh, OAS Mobile Top 10 uh, is a very generic, but it is very comprehensive too. And I think if you do both OAS Mobile Top 10 along with SAQ, probably you are much better than the others who are there, right? So I think yeah, that's the way to go forward. Thank you so much for the answers. This question is specific. I mean, directed at Selena, but feel free to add your comments, everyone else. So, what would you advise application developers to do to ensure better mobile security for their clients?
Okay. For a better security, hold on, let me look back at the question there. All right.
Yeah.
Ensure better mobile security for their clients. Okay. There is a few things that can be covered. Either that you have to separate the two, which is good to have, or is actually can be can be put into emergency. Okay. I go for the emergency part. Number one is to make sure that your application have been hardened. Make sure that there is a security testing. The most important thing is testing. And then after that, awareness. Okay, number one, testing is normally a stress testing. Stress testing is based on always on your risk appetite basis. The basis of risk appetite will be how many of your customer complained about your application. Any regards of the application is either they cannot key in the data, or they keep basically having an issue with the data that it may not be working, or they believe that their data have been leaked. So you have to find that kind of improvement based on the risk appetite of that kind of complaint from the customer service or from the call center. Okay, number two is basically the complaints from where you post it online, which is Google Play, iOS, or Android. This is where you can see and improve based on the scenario within these two complaints, which is we call it for IT risk, we call it a risk appetite. So based on that, secure and enhance based on those complaints. And and then after that, basically, if there is a module, a new features that you wanted to try, make sure the broad perspective have to be in place. Number one, your application team must think of must sit down with the security on what is the most recent application have been hacked, and to think about the best scenario for them to test on all of this. Because of normally, as for us as IT risk, we basically, when the application go live, we normally receive a complaint. We normally gather all the complaints from the call center, customers experience, that digital banking, what customer complaints are all about, and we found out that is even the application not think about it, or basically the application think it is not going to happen because of it's actually a small space of user will be using it. Don't think about that. You have to, exhaust all of the potential scenario that will be happening to your application, because of cyber attack never rests. Never rests for the wicked. So that is normally happening. And then for the one that I said that for the one that is good to have is basically make sure that whenever your application go live, make sure there is another round of tests to be done, which is you hire a third party, or maybe you basically hire your own security team to perform a security testing, a cyber attack on your application. This is to see how durable is your application is, because of we don't want when the customer download the application and the application went down whenever they use it. So we don't want that to happen. So the most important thing is you have to test it even though it goes live. So some business may have some issue not able to test even though go live, but before go live, make sure that during the pre-production, before move to production, you have tested and also perform penetration testing, cyber attack testing on it, just to ensure that your application is durable enough to face the public cyber attack out there. So that is normally what I suggest or recommend to do when I was based on my experience.
Yeah, thank you, Selena, for that. To summarize your point, it's always test, and test, right? Which I completely agree with, because one of the biggest problem with mobile apps is when it goes to the app store, right? There is no control over you. You cannot bring it back. Like for a website, if there is a issue, let's say there is a SQL injection which comes in, you apply a patch and that's it, it goes away. But if a mobile app gets released in the app store with a vulnerability, just imagine if somebody downloads it and does not upgrade the mobile app itself, it's out of your control. You just can't pull it back. And hence, testing is very, 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 very important at every step. And at every step, is DLC cycle. I completely agree. I'm so sorry. We are kind of out of time. We are running 2 minutes above time. So we do have few more questions from social media, but we can't take it right now. But what we will try to do is curate all of these questions and probably pass it on to you guys. You can add your own viewpoints, and then to everyone who have signed up for this webinar, for this panel discussion, we'll send out that and also the recording for this. So if unfortunately you join in the middle, or if you have to drop off in the middle, don't worry. We'll share this recording with each and every one of you along with the questionnaires. And I'll just share our thank you screen for everyone. And thank you so much for attending this panel discussion. It was a very engaging discussion which I had between all of you. Thank you so much for taking out your time. Thank you, everyone, the attendees and everybody who's looking at the social media also to take out your time and ask questions. Thank you, everyone. There is a poll if you have joined via Zoom. Just make sure that you go to the poll and vote for your select your options. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye, Azad. Bye, Majori.
Bye.
Selena.
Thank you.
Thank you.